Well, firstly, thank you very much for staying on and joining for the last session, because I am obviously in between you and a beer and the sunshine and everything else. So I ruminated quite a long time when I saw what the title of this was, A Digital Coming of Age. Because clearly we're at a really important inflection point, in the development of digital. And what I'd thought I was going to talk about was really take quite a big look at this in terms of the role of digital and digitalization in the development of society and the economy, because we really have a digital economy. The role of marketing and what marketing means in an economy that is digital, and then what is the role of media and advertising within that. And I wanted to make that a bit provocative because it's something that is where I'm really focused on what are the real implications of what's happening. Then I also assumed that you would have talked a lot about viewability, measurement, bot traffic, blah, 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 data, Mark Pritchard. So I thought I'll avoid all of those or most of those things. And then I was getting on the plane, and I don't know if apologies that this is a UK thing, but the Daily Mail's headline today, the big splash on it is Facebook helps teens watch porn, which is about 6 weeks, I think, after their headline of the Sunday Mail, or the Mail on Sunday, was Google blood money. So regardless of everything else that's happening, the whole role of digital is called into question. And so I just want to put one little bit of context. So I've actually rewritten a lot of my stuff. I've thrown some slides together. I've even got some stats, which I've pulled out, because I'm genuinely a bit pissed off about everything. And just to give you a little bit of context, so, and I never really do this, and there's a couple of people who know me quite well. I studied economics, and actually, my dissertation was the effect of advertising on the sales and manufacturing business. And trust me, it was a long time ago. I then worked for the first 8-9 years of my career in fashion and textiles, in hardcore manufacturing. Right at the time, during the 80s, where the textile and fashion industry not only collapsed on itself, but turned itself upside down, which was an amazing experience. And at the end of that, I really got into CAD/CAM, computer-aided manufacturing and design, and the effect and implications of technology on the manufacturing process. And I was lucky enough to go to Japan, study modular manufacturing. I stumbled into media and advertising. And again, as I was going through today, this is literally about an hour ago, I worked out it was 25 years and 25 days ago exactly. And I was fascinated by two things in my first. This was April the 29th, 1992. And I was fascinated by two things. And I sat down and tried to understand the TV market. I didn't have to do, whoops, I wasn't supposed to do that. I got carried away. I tried to understand the TV market. I wasn't going to do anything to do with TV, and I wasn't going to do anything to do with buying or anything like that, but I wanted to understand it. It was sensational to understand. I mean, it was literally, again, having done some economics, that here was a market where if the quality of the product went down, the price went up. And I was like, no, that can't be true. And I really was, taken through it and explained exactly why that was. And at the same time, there was the growth of and the start of something called the internet. And I actually wrote a paper for the group about it in November '93. And for me, from that point on, it was the digitization of media and the economy and everything was a complete inevitability, and the internet would be at the center of that. But as a health warning, I always say to people that there's a couple of things I always say. Right, 1 hour spent thinking about something is worth 10 hours spent reading about it. And the other thing which I'd always held for the last few years, I read something in the mid-'80s, and it was a little piece in the FT. And a little old lady at some great big investor conference and asked it wasn't Warren Buffett, but it was someone a bit like him, why he'd had 53 years of continuous success. And he said, and I thought this is absolutely brilliant, every morning I get up, I look at myself in the mirror, and I say to myself, I know absolutely nothing, and act accordingly. Which, if you think about it, is amazing to put yourself in a position to embrace change. So it's an inevitability, but
Hello?
I'm in a bar right now, down in the 4th sector. Why don't you come on down here and have a drink?
That's not my kind of place.
So, anyone know quickly? Yeah, Blade Runner, but what year was it made? 1982. 1982. 1982, by 1919, of course, is 2 years away. Flying cars, not a problem. Make a video call, you've got to get down out of the flying car, go into the bar, into the phone box, and make one. Okay? So this is a piece of work we did in 2001. And it was someone extremely clever who then went to work for Google. And what I wanted to look at, right at the heart of the dot-com crash, was what was actually happening to the consumer. And what was happening is, every day, every month, every week, they were adopting more to that. I actually presented this, I was in a session after Bill Gates' thing in early January 2002. And Microsoft actually, for obvious reasons, really liked it. But there you are, bang. 2020, 80% of all media will be digital. And it ain't gonna be that far wrong. And the one thing we all said is, it will be wrong, but we think it's broadly right. But of course, there are peaks and troughs and crashes and all those things. And of course, we had a big one in 2008. I did a talk in New York. You can Google this, actually. The talk in New York on the week layman's went down, and it was called Looking Down the Barrel of a Gun, talking about the advertising industry, the digital industry, actually needing to really innovate because everyone was complaining at that stage. Everyone was complaining about Google. I was surprised. They're still complaining about Google, but then actually not really doing that much about it. I think that we're at a very similar stage. Hopefully, the implications won't be quite as bad as the financial service industry, which there was a pivot point at which, of course, the core products, everything was being run by an algorithm, and the people in charge had no idea what was happening. That's where our industry is pretty much now. That's where a lot of our clients are. They've invested hundreds and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into digital without understanding what the implications were. In terms of a future, I absolutely think the future for our economy, for our society, everything is digital. That hasn't changed. I think convergence and innovation are going to be the key to getting out of the situation that we're in. That will drive productivity. It will also drive progress. The digital economy will run everything, and there will be a return to globalization when people actually realize what's happening. Of course, we're going to get a wave of all this stuff, which is transforming people's experiences at the front end and at the back end, making the economy much more autonomous, much more real time. World Economic Forum predicts the digital economy could generate a dividend for society of $100 trillion in the next 10 years. That sounds like quite a lot. However, despite all those wonderful things, a lot of our clients, a lot of our people, the Daily Mail, all the headlines are saying that this is a really uncertain world. It's a horrible world. Everything's worse. And which is why we get this lot, which is partly a retreat from globalization, but partly a complete misunderstanding of what is happening underlying the implications and the implications of what's happened with digital. So there's real, if we are at coming of age, there's some real obstacles and barriers that can affect our coming of age. If deglobalization continues, because deglobalization at the moment is a political issue, not an economic one. Let's be really clear, it's a political issue. When you have at WEF, Xi Jinping, the president of China, standing up and arguing for globalization when the president of the US is arguing for protectionism, then you know the whole world has gone mad and it's all about politics. James made a point right at the end there, the Elon Musk quote, again, meaningful. There's some amazing innovation, but it's drowned out by all the crap. Complexity, that was last, I'm sure you talked a lot about complexity today. It's bewilderingly complex. It's a much more complex world, and people haven't worked out that world, and legislation is miles behind. And then finally, and very importantly, because this is the really important thing, that, because I'm going to show some stats and show some things that actually, you know what? We're wildly better off than we were. But for the first time, for 100 years, the gap between the poorest and the richest in society was narrowing. Since 2008, it's got wider. And digital has not helped. I think, going to speed, part of the issue is speed, and part of it is context. And context is really important. Now, I haven't actually addressed the IAB for about 10 years, so apologies for that. But you're right into the detail of this industry. But what I'd say is we all have a role and a responsibility to look up as well and understand what we're doing has an implication on everything else because, as we always argue, digital is independent, interconnected, and all those things. So speed is all about frogs. Right? So with a frog, why is it about a frog? If you take a pan of water and you put it on the stove to boil, and you throw the frog in when it's boiling, the frog leaps out. Because it actually has the muscle power, believe it or not, it's true, and it will leap out because it realizes it's gone into a hostile environment. If you put it in a pan of cold water, you put the pan on to boil, it boils to death. Because at the start it's going, hey, this is quite nice. This is my environment, getting a little bit warmer, until such time, actually, oh, this is becoming a hostile environment, but I haven't got the muscle strength. I don't know how to get out. It can't. Think a lot of our biggest advertisers and a lot of our biggest spenders. Context. This is a wonderful thing I've literally dragged up, right? And it's fascinating. Don't knock globalization too much. People are knocking globalization. Politically, they're saying it's taking away jobs, it's doing this, it's terrible. Now, the world, it's just the dynamics and the economics of the world have changed. This is actually real. You can go and Google this. This is from, and I took this because it's 25 years before the start of the internet. So this is 1968. This is, of all things, Peterborough Girls' School or something, which is amazing. Back in then, a working family, and a working class family, had to go and, sorry, this is a UK example, had to go and buy a blazer. Not only did they have to go and buy it, they were told you can only get it at 2 places. In fact, you can only get the whole uniform at 2 places, and you have to buy it. It cost the list, and you get this family were given that here's the uniform you got to buy. It cost £30 and 15 shillings. Today, you can go to Walmart or Tesco or wherever it is, and you can equip your kids for less than £30 for an entire school year. At the same time, the average working household income has gone up 23x. Now, everyone has to spend more on power and heat and light and various things like that. But 25 years before 1968, right, we were 2 years from the end of the Second World War, and 25 years before that, we were just ending another war, and in between, there were soup factories and kitchens and everything else. Right? The world is indisputably much better than it was. Even when I was growing up, right, over my lifetime, right, the average height of an individual has grown by nearly 3 inches. The life expectancy of both men and women have gone up by more than 10 years. What is going to happen with healthcare and the provision of health sciences is going to exponentially, potentially improve the quality of life. And that is even before you get into what autonomous vehicles might do in terms of cutting down road deaths, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And yet, we all feel shit. Everyone's feeling the world, right, is all unfair and everything. And it's a relativity issue and a context issue, not an absolute issue. And the other issue, which I may say our industry is fabulously guilty of, is an absolute fixation on short-term impacts and a reluctance to really genuinely spend that time really thinking about the implications and do anything about them. Because, of course, that's a lot harder. Whereas, as I say, it's much more exciting to get really jazzed up about an app that might make us $1 billion next year, you know, although it's contributed virtually zero to the future of mankind. Now, that's the background and the context. What is absolutely inevitable is that the economy will become digital. I think the actual economics changed into being predominantly driven by digital in the back end of 2014. And everything else that's happened since has kind of proved that. You know, and if you look at what's happened to where value has migrated to, especially in Western stock exchanges, is towards digital-powered businesses and away from the businesses that have got legacy. This is why what we're really focused on is innovating the way brands are built. Right? So it's explicitly and implicitly about our clients and about their marketing assets, but it's also not just about how they're communicated, but how they're built. Because legacy businesses, some of our biggest clients, some of the clients, no doubt, that you've been talking about today, their business models were built on long-run manufacturing, on supply chain, on logistics, on creating barriers to entry, which were based on the supply side of the economy. What the new economy will be about is built and designed around the customer experience and being reactive to it. So this is actually a little screen grab out of The Economist, Adidas, who is actually one of our clients. And they have, I've got no chance of being done in 5 minutes, but I'll go as quickly as I can, right? Is literally being able, the manufacturing lines up to what the consumer wants. The big dividend that no one talks about in terms of digital is data on an individual basis is a key issue. The dividend to society of really understanding, and this is where marketing is right at the center, right, of what it is that people want and what they need, and then being able to make it for them. Think of the waste that we can cut out. Think of the efficiency of the use of resources. So it's a big opportunity. Our whole industry, sorry, this is going to be a bit of a prose poem now because I got carried away. Our whole industry, we talk about convergence, but yes, it's converging. We kind of used to operate within a $570 billion business, right? We don't now. We operate in a $2.5 trillion business because technology and media and advertising and content and entertainment are all coming together. And that's a big opportunity. But where digital media actually comes into play is it's the fabric. Okay, I first showed this in 2006. This is what media is where it used to be where content was organized at fixed points of time and place in channels, as we all know, and suddenly became networks of connection where the connection points of people, often operating in real time. And again, this is where the economics comes in. This is the economics of perfect competition. Because, you know, with one of these, anyone, all of us here, we can check the price of coal, the future of whatever it is without moving. We know what the price of Louis Vuitton shoes is down the road, whether it's Hong Kong, I'm going to Brussels tomorrow, I don't have to move. Right? And perfect competition is where producers and consumers have equal knowledge and therefore equal power. What happens then is you get the equilibrium of supply and demand, and then you have to hold your thing and wherever it is. Is that okay? Yeah, sorry. This is really, really, really important because this is what makes, all markets at the moment are made by consumers, not by companies. So digital transformations, about none of that stuff we always talk about, is about people and really understanding people, but more importantly, engineering all our systems and all our processes back from them. And which is why, if the old economy was a supply economy, this is a demand economy. By the way, this is good for all of us because we understand the consumer and we're connected to the consumer and we are the digital methods are going to be the ones that connect brands and consumers. But because they're people, it isn't just deterministically algorithm driven because most of us in this room have hearts as well as minds, right? And we actually make decisions based on emotions. So it's going to be about marketing to real people. And that is, what marketing has a real opportunity. It's going to be the primary source of contact and driving revenue for companies in the digital economy and moving forward. So from a content perspective, it's personalized. From a media perspective, it's addressability. And those two things, there's no point in being brilliantly addressable if you then don't give the content that individual person that you've just reached wants. There's no point in developing brilliantly personalized content if you can't actually deliver it to somebody. I just threw this in gratuitously, just because, is it complex? Yes. Is it overly complex? Yes. Has our industry just, confused the hell out of everybody completely? And we have to sort that out because advertising and media should be and will be. They were disciplines developed because you had a separation of consumers and producers away from people. So you had to develop these tools and processes and an industry to market to people you didn't know. And now, ultimately, it's going to be coming back to people you do know. So personalized and addressable, all that stuff you've all been talking about forever. But we really have to bring the content and creativity together with the media side of it. If we do that, our industry is going to be really dynamic. It's exciting. It's limitless. It will remain instant. And speed and agility is critical. Most of the businesses who are complaining about the industry have a right because it's overly complex. However, they also have a vested interest because in the new world, it's about capability, speed, and agility, not about scale and negotiating power. But if we really, really want digital to be, the future, if we really, really want in this room digital to come of age, then we have to address, some of the other issues. Because there's a potential digital dividend, 100 trillion, whatever it may be, but there is a digital divide. So many of the people in our society do not have access. We still have 4 billion people that are not connected. But in Western economies, you still have people who are disenfranchised. It may be a brilliant idea to change things over to a digital completion, but if you haven't got access, that's not a very great thing. Also, the digital industry has been amazing at wealth creation and terrible at spreading prosperity and the feeling of it. So we actually need to create a digital economy that works better for everyone. We've made society a formal stakeholder in the business, and we're really going to get behind that. And I would just ask everyone to really think about the implications of everything that we do to do that. And I always end on this slide in every presentation I give, right, which is unsurprisingly called The Boy on the Skateboard. Right? And if you think right, at this moment, this inflection point, if he thinks, I'm going to fall off and get hurt, what's going to happen? He'll fall off and get hurt. If he thinks, you know what, that may be amazing as I fly into the ocean, there is a reasonable chance, there is some chance he's going to make it. And we have to be really brave, we have to be on the front foot, we can't be defensive, but we have to address the issues you've been talking about all day. Sorry, I hope I didn't run over too much, and I'm very happy to, if there is time for a question. If not, I'm sure we can over a beer. Thank you for staying, and thank you for listening. Thank you.
And I'm delighted to say you haven't run over time. You have a couple more minutes. So
right.
Are there any questions, ladies and gentlemen, for that provocative soothsaying from Mr. Morris? Any questions at all from the floor, ladies and gentlemen? Tom, there's Tom over there.
Hi, Tom.
Hi, Nigel. How are you doing?
Yeah.
So one of the things that came up today, which you didn't touch on, you talked about capability, speed, and agility.
Yep.
In the narrower context of the advertising industry, people talked a lot about the current position of the industry as a whole and the slight walled gardens of Facebook and Google and how well they're doing. I just wondered how you saw what you've described fitting together with where we are now versus where we're going.
Yeah. I'm not in, yes. In the context of, if you like, again, addressability, marketing to people you know, I think ability to create, I mean, what will get away of get everything out of the way will be genuinely marketing to real people in a closed loop. So deterministic IDs, right, which are all opt-in, within an environment. Now, the interesting thing is, we're developing ours, publisher addressable marketplaces, putting together. We're doing this first in the US for obvious reasons, because it's easier to get a deterministic ID there. And with Merkle, we've got 280 million. One of the issues that I think is interesting is GDPR will probably favor Google and Facebook, simply because they'll be able to do, they can continue to do closed loop within their walled gardens, and that then becomes a disincentive for them to open that up. What is absolutely clear is it's ludicrous. It's completely understandable from a business model perspective, but having Facebook, Google, and a number of the others having different measurements standards doesn't make any sense. What equally doesn't make any sense is inventing standards that are based on old-fashioned standard behaviors which don't exist anymore. So that is difficult, but what we are encouraging Google and Facebook is to lean into being able to operate so that we can operate transversely across all platforms. If that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Nigel.
Thank you.
Once again, ladies and gentlemen, Nigel Morris.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.